Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome back. So this was the last slide where we discussed about natural disaster in India. Now, as I was talking about that there are many agencies at national as well as at state level who have taken proactive actions or maybe the initiatives to minimize the hazard in different ways. So this is what NDMAs talk about, is that the disaster management is one of the most important activity which can reduce in total the life loss as well as the property loss during any kind of disaster. So what is important is that what we were talking yesterday also in the previous lecture, that this is in preparedness. Okay, so there is a mitigation part, and so any disaster occurs, then there has to be an immediate relief, and this will depend on the preparedness. So before an event comes, what is your preparedness and what is your understanding about that event is extremely important. So immediate response has to be there, otherwise if you delay, you are going to see more number of fatality, or the number of people getting killed will increase if the relief has not been given immediately. And then so assessment is important, because that will help us in the way that how we are going to deal for the reconstruction and the rehabilitation. The people who got affected, injured, lost their houses and all that, how we are going to rehabilitate them, actually that is very important. Of course, to some extent we can prevent, but I would say that you can just minimize the hazard or the risk part if you are having good capacity building, and this capacity building is in process what we talk about the mitigation and the preparedness. So disaster risk in India are further compounded by increasing vulnerability related. One is changing demographic and socio-economic conditions. So we see that few states are overpopulated, people have moved or migrated from one area to another area depending on the socio-economic conditions. And of course, if you are having in the rural areas, the construction pattern may not be up to the mark to withstand any disaster, any kind of disaster, then the life loss as well as the property loss will be much higher. So this is another part is unplanned urbanization. Now without having the preparedness or the understanding of the hazard, we are going very fast in terms of development. So unplanned urbanization, development within high risk zones. So when we understand the hazard and which areas are prone to the particular hazard, then according to that there will be the zonation. As for example, in the previous slide we were talking about the micro zonation or macro zonation of India, which has been given based on the earthquake history, that the whole India can be subdivided into 4 categories, from zone 2 to zone 5. So depending on the different hazard, you have the risk zones which could be allocated, and based on that you can minimize the hazard. But to some extent, what we experience that is heavy loss in terms of the building collapse or maybe the property getting affected as well as people is because of unplanned urbanization development within high-risk zones. Environmental degradation, climate change, geological hazard and epidemics will also add into the more disasters. All this contribute to a situation where disasters seriously threaten India's economy, its population and sustainable development, because any country, the development of any country will depend upon the sustainable growth in terms of economy, in terms of the infrastructure also. Now, if that is going to be disturbed, we are definitely going to be affected towards our growth. These are few examples of major disasters which occurred during 1972 up to 2014. This is we are talking about 2014. 2015 it was in Nepal, but of course you can add more here, as we were giving in examples in the beginning itself, that we had like 2018 flood in Kerala. So similarly you have many hazards, but if you look at the different type of different hazards here, including flood, cyclones, you have list of that, and it has affected many areas. Coming to earthquake, tsunamis, earthquake in Kashmir 2005, floods in Maharashtra, cyclone Nisa, Kosi flood in 2008. So this was also again a very deadly event in terms of the flooding event in Bihar because of the Kosi flood. Okay. So you can look at, and then another one is that since last couple of years we have been hearing about the cloud burst, that is sudden pouring down of the water from sky, is cloud burst, and which resulted into the landslide in Ladakh. That was in 2010. Then earthquakes, floods, earthquakes and all that. So you have several such events which goes back up to 1972, which talks about the different kind of hazard, which includes floods, earthquakes, landslides, tsunamis and so on. Now coming to earthquake, let us see quickly what we learn about this, but of course we will be talking in detail later on. In general, the Asia Pacific region alone records 70% of world's earthquake measuring magnitude 7 or more on Richter scale. At an average, if we take 15 events are occurring per year, that is of magnitude 7 in this particular area, that is the Asia Pacific region. The countries of the region which are badly affected by earthquakes includes Japan, Philippines, India, Nepal, Afghanistan, Iran and Pacific Islands. Now if you talk about Japan here, the preparedness, the awareness about different events is so high amongst the community or the society that they are able to minimize the hazard or the risk in all senses. But in India, if similar magnitude earthquake occurs, or in Afghanistan, Philippines, number of toll will go high, that is number of fatalities or people getting killed or people getting injured, and property loss will be much higher. Many of those countries in the region are located along or adjacent to Pacific Ocean seismic zone or the Indian Ocean seismic zone. We will come to this, what do you mean by seismic zone and what is the Pacific seismic zone and Indian Ocean seismic zone. But in short, I can talk about this quickly, is that Indian Ocean seismic zone is the zone along which 2004 earthquake took place, that was of Sumatra, Andaman. Magnitude was 9.2, and it also triggered the devastating tsunami. For example, 50 to 60% of India is vulnerable to seismic activity. So, in one of the slides we are talking about the coastal areas. We are having the coastal regions, or the coastline, which is more than 7,500 kilometers. Out of that, almost like 5,000 is vulnerable. That is what we talk here, that even the land area, including the land area also, almost like 50 to 60%. So, more than half of the Indian plate or the Indian peninsula is or Indian subcontinent, we can say, is vulnerable to seismic activity, and that also of varying intensity, particularly the area in Himalayan region and the Union Territory of Andaman and Nicobar. So, if I quickly draw a very rough sketch here, so this is your Indian northern part, and then it comes down here, and then we have something like that. Okay, very rough sketch I am putting in, and then we have the islands which are sitting here. Okay, so this is an Andaman subduction zone, and this part is your Himalayan collision zone. So, and apart from there, so this is one zone which is very dangerous, another zone is here, third is here, and that is in the Kutch region, and one is which is Narmada zone area, which is in the center. So, most of the area is under the threat of seismic activity. So, example, if you look at, because if you say more than 50 to 60% area is vulnerable to seismic activity, we have experienced the earthquakes in the region which were been considered as unstable continental regions, like the earthquake in Maharashtra state in western India in September 1993 claimed almost 12,000 lives, and in January 2001, that was in Bhuj earthquake, claimed almost 20,000 lives, and more than a lakh due to 2004 Sumatra Andaman earthquake. So, these are very if we look at in 20th century, we had couple of earthquakes, but in 21st century we had the damaging earthquakes like 2001 Bhuj and 2004 Sumatra Andaman, which also accompanied the tsunami. Now, in most of the literature you will find this correlation between the average number of earthquake per year worldwide and a comparison of the amount of energy they expand. Okay. So, the amount of energy release is compared with the energy release here, which is equivalent in kilogram of explosives. Okay. So,